And good morning. How's everybody doing today? Dr. Roddenberry coming to you from Western New York at the Chautauqua Institution. Good morning, Dimitro. Good to see you. How's everybody doing today? Looks like we got a couple people here. Fantastic. Thanks for coming to webinar last night. It was wonderful to talk to you as always, my friend. And I hope everything's treating you well, Dimitro. All right, let's go ahead and get into this. So today we're talking about gender and sex. We're talking about this. This is chapter 11. We're actually skipping chapter 12. We're skipping chapter 12. I just didn't find anything in there that I really wanted to talk about. So we did yesterday's lecture, or excuse me, we did Tuesday's lecture on the biology of sexual differentiation, and then we're covering chapter 11, and those are the things that we're doing for this week's homework. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit more about gender and sex, if we could. All right, let's go ahead and switch. All right, gender-related concepts I want you to be familiar with. We talked about this last night, and hopefully it made sense to you, or actually I'm sure it made sense to you. You're not knuckleheads. But last night we were talking about the difference between gender and sex, right? And we suggested that sex is this genetic and biological concept. We have a genetic sex that's created by our chromosomes, and then we have a full biological sexual maturity that unfolds as a result of genetic and biological forces that are in our body. And this is referred to as our sex, our biological demonstration of either being male or female. And we're going to compare that with gender, which, as you'll see here, relates to the cognitive, social, and behavioral aspects of being male or female. So this is where we discuss the question of what males and what females do, what they believe, what they think, what they feel. Now, if you look over here on the left side of the screen, you're going to notice, did I point the right way? I did this way, yes. All right. And these are some terms that I want you to be familiar with as a result of having taken this class. Remember, gender is this idea, this belief about whether or not you are being male or female. So we can talk about gender is the state of being male or female, and your gender identity is your perception of yourself as being male or female. Gender stereotypes are just generalized beliefs about what we think males and females should do. Okay, and then we talked a little bit about gender differences between male and female abilities, personalities, perceptions. And then gender roles are the jobs, the scripts, the rules, the roles that guide how we behave based upon our sex. And we're going to remember we differentiated all of these gender identity points. We differentiated them from sexual orientation. Remember, gender, the belief that you're a male or a female, is one thing, but your sexual orientation, your desire, your sexual attraction towards one group or the other is completely different. And those things can be separated, okay? So you can have one gender and a completely unrelated sexual orientation. Remember, those two things are not necessarily the same. I see that we've got Johanna in the house today, and we've got Matt in the house. Thanks. Good to see you. Thanks for showing up today. It's always great to see you. Okay, so let's talk about these gender stereotypes. Typically, what you're going to see, there are two basic different there are two gender stereotypes for males and females. The male stereotype is probably going to be more instrumental than the female stereotype, and the female stereotype is going to accentuate expressiveness uh, rather than instrumentality. Uh, so, if you think about it, your males stereotypes tend to be more about action and accomplishment. If you remember that video we watched last night, what were they giving the boys? Trucks and building toys and things to build with, right? So they gave the male baby those toys that fit along with their gender stereotype that boys are more in, that the male gender is more instrumental, more designed towards action and building and creating things. And you'll notice in that video that we watched last night, when the adults thought that the baby was a female baby, they gave that baby toys that related more towards relationships. So they gave the child baby dolls and things to nurture and play with, and accentuated nurturing kinds of behaviors. Now, when you look at these gender stereotypes over here, do any of these gender points maybe not seem accurate? Is it true that we see females as being more artistic than males? Would you agree with that? Do you think females, they're more understanding, whereas men are more likely to take a stand? Soft voice as opposed to physically strong. So these represent two different ways in which we divide the world based upon the qualities that we think people should have. So we have these masculine stereotypes and these feminine stereotypes. And these stereotypes create roles, gender roles, by which direct our behavior as males and females. Gender roles are cultural expectations about what is appropriate behavior for each gender. And gender role socialization is the acquisition of norms and roles expected of people in a particular society. Can somebody tell me give me a gender role that is for males? What's a gender role for male? And how did you learn it? What's a gender role for a male? Somebody go ahead and type in the chat bar. Okay. Let's say a masculine gender role might be that you have to, let's see, a gender role is that you have to be able to fix things around the house. You have to be able to fix things. How exactly hunting? There we go, Noda. Hunting. That's definitely a male gender role. Although I do know some females that hunt, as a general rule, we think of that as a masculine activity. Now, how do we socialize little boys to enjoy hunting? How are little boys socialized to enjoy hunting? And in the meantime, if somebody wants to type in a stereotypical female gender role, I'd be interested in seeing that. Car maintenance, hunting, yeah, all these male things. What are some female gender roles that we have out there? Can anybody answer one of those? Car maintenance is definitely, I would say, considered a male gender role. I'd be curious to see if you have any female gender roles out there. Go ahead and put that up here. Right here. Okay. Well, Dimitro might say cooking. Absolutely. Cooking sometimes is seen as a female role. Absolutely. So, how do we learn these roles? your book talks about some of the ways in which we learn these roles: how to cook, how to do cars, how to hunt. We learn all these roles. How exactly do we learn these roles? Cleaning the house and taking care of the children. Absolutely. Great idea. Good examples, Johanna. Now, we didn't really talk about operant conditioning in here, but you probably understand. We train these roles by reinforcing and punishing children when they engage in these roles, right? And so gender roles are often shaped by consequences. If your if your if your son goes out and hunts and kills some sort of animal, a deer or whatnot, you come home and everybody in the community pats him on the back and tells him what a great job he's done. In a sense, he's being reinforced. He is being rewarded for engaging in that behavior. On the other hand, if your daughter cooks a wonderful dinner, she's able to cook, let's say, not a dinner, but let's say she cooks a macaroni and cheese, a homemade macaroni and cheese family meal. The whole family may reinforce, reward, or tell her how she is for having done that. So in a sense, that is first. On the other hand, if your daughter tells you that she wants to go hunting with you, you might give her an angry look and say, "Girls don't hunt." In a sense, what you're doing is you're punishing that desire of her by uh-oh. Hello. Can you see me? It looks like we've got a little bit of buffering today. Okay, all right, I'm back. All right, I'm not sure what happened. Did you lose me there for a minute? Did you lose me for a minute? It looked to me like I froze. Okay. All right, I'm back. I am so sorry about that. Holy cow. I'm not sure what happened, folks. Okay. So, one of the ways in which we learn our social roles is through reinforcement and punishment. Okay, I'm back. So, how these gender roles are shaped by consequences. If you think about it, our parents, our teachers, and our peers often reinforce gender appropriate behavior by applauding us when we do things that are consistent with our gender and by punishing us when we do things that are inconsistent with our gender role. And what your book's going to suggest is that parents, fathers in particular, are much less tolerant of gender inappropriate behavior, especially in their sons. So a father is probably going to be more likely to take his daughter hunting than he will be to accept his son playing with baby dolls or taking dance classes, right? Now, one of the things that you'll notice on television right now is they are trying to show females in all kinds of different roles that don't necessarily conform with gender stereotyping. So we show the female superhero, the female athlete. It's very important that we show female athletes on TV, right? Soccer players, basketball players. The idea of wanting to show all of these female non-stereotypic gender roles is because we know that people also learn from observing and copying what other people do. So it's very important to show people who also are able to jump outside of their roles. This is more important, I think, for females who seem constricted by genders to avoid some types of jobs and some types of events that they might rather participate in. But a lot of females are limited from economic opportunities because girls can't do that. And so, what is important in the media is to show models of females who engage in some of these stereotypically male jobs and male roles to allow female to break out of the sort of the cultural bonds that keep them from enjoying different parts of the of economic activities. So observational learning. And what you're going to find is that young children are especially likely to imitate same gender adults. So one of the things I found was that my boys wanted to copy their father. When I played baseball, my boys tried to pick up the baseball bat and the glove. Unfortunately, when my boys saw me smoking one day, they picked up small crayons and pretended to smoke themselves. So children learn by observational learning. And what you're going to find is that children, starting around the 2 to 3 years of age, actually start selecting themselves into appropriate gender groups so that they can begin practicing those gender stereotypic behaviors with each other. Now, I don't know if you remember yesterday when we watched that video, Johanna, Matt, all of y'all were there. Do you remember when we had those kids that were being raised in a gender-free household and they asked the child if it was male or female? Do you remember that scene in the movie? When they were asking the child if it was male or female, what did that child answer? Do you remember the question? We refer to children as having a sense of gender constancy when they know that they are one gender or the other and they don't change. So at around age 2 or 3, most children are going to be able to label themselves as either male or female, and they're going to understand that that quality does not change. If you remember that video from yesterday, do you remember what they were saying? I hope you're live on the broadcast at this point. But they asked that one child, and the child said that they were a boy today and a girl tomorrow, right? That's sort of that's a little more fluid of a gender definition of a gender definition than we would expect from children that age. That was the one thing that actually worried me about that video. Typically, children can pick their own gender. Typically, around age 3 or 4, children have a sense of gender constancy. They feel who they are, either as a male or a female. What I was wondering was how that child's gender inconstancy would affect them later in life. Because that child in the video we watched seemed to think that their gender could flip-flop back and forth day in and day out. Now, gender schemas are cognitive structures that guide the processing of gender-relevant information. So a gender schema is what is a belief about what boys do and what girls do. Now, as you saw in the video we showed last night, your parents are going to typically encourage the child to play in activities that are gender appropriate. If you saw those adults last night, they went to those toddlers, those 1 and 2-year-old kids, and tried to give them toys that they thought fit with that child's gender. And so a meta-analysis showed that as a general rule, parents gender socialize their kids by giving them gender appropriate toys very early in life. These studies also show that for toys, dads are less or dads are less likely to let their little boy play with a doll than they are to let their daughter play with a football. So if a football is a stereotypic male toy and a baby doll is a stereotypic female toy, what you're going to find is that as a general rule, it will be easier for the female to play with the football than it will be for the boy to play with the baby doll. And if you look at the picture books that we use to teach our kids what you're going to how to read, what you're going to find is that most of these picture books, most of these early books that we read, are going to socialize our children to using gender stereotypic activities. If you watch kids on the playground, what you're going to notice is that starting early in childhood, kids are going to start to self-segregate in terms of gender. So your little boys are going to start to play together and your little girls are going to start to play together at the age of 3 or 4. They're going to self-segregate themselves in their groups. And you know what? There are going to be big social punishments among these peer groups for children who violate these gender groups. So in age 4 or 5 or 6, what you're going to find is that your little boys have to play with the other little boys, and your little girls are going to have to play with other little girls. They're going to self-segregate, and these segregations are going to be pretty strong in terms of how they direct these kids' behaviors. Now, your boys are probably going to be more active. They're going to play more games, more rough and tumble play. You're going to find that your boy groups are going to be larger groups. And you find that your females are going to play in smaller groups, and they're not going to play at games and rough and tumble activities as much as they're going to engage in role-playing games and coordinated play where they play together but not competitively. So you're going to see that as we begin to socialize, our parents are going to give us gender specific toys, and they're going to sort of encourage us to play with those gender specific toys, especially for boys, man. Your parents are going to want you to play with gender specific toys. And then around age 4 or 5, kids are going to start to separate out into gender specific groups. And these groups are going to play differently that emphasize different gender roles. And then in school, and I'm not sure if this is true anymore because female academic achievement is skyrocketing past male academic achievement, but there appears to be differences in how teachers treat boys and girls in class. And your book's going to suggest that boys are often given more attention, given more help, praised more often, and scolded more often in class than are females. Your females are going to sort of fade into the background as your boys suck up all the attention of the teachers. Now, your book suggests that as you move up through the K through 12 educational system and kids begin thinking about college, your book's going to suggest that even your academic and career counselors in school are going to socialize your children to different activities, trying to send the boys to engineering school and trying to send the girls to nursing school. An interesting story, my wife, when she was in high school and was thinking about her future, her family did not encourage her to go to college at all. In fact, I would say anything, her rural country family was not very interested in seeing her go to college at all. They discouraged her. And when she told them that she was going to college, they said, okay, you need to go to college to be a nurse or a teacher. So, my wife's vocational advice from her family and peers and counselors was that if you're going to go to college, a nurse or a teacher would be a great job for you. Now, my wife actually had an interest in being a business person, and so she went to school and majored in business, much to the unhappiness of her family. But in a sense, her school and her parents and her peers all encouraged her in a gender stereotypic fashion. Now, as you think about your life and your life's interests, try to come to any insights. Were you encouraged based upon your gender to do certain things? Were there any pressures or limitations placed on what you might find interesting? Were you a male that maybe wanted to go into teaching, or maybe you thought you might want to be a hairstylist, or some sort of uh, hair care person, and people discouraged you from it? If you were a female, were you interested maybe in being a soldier or a construction worker, and your parents discouraged you from that? So, this process of teaching these gender roles starts when we're infants with the toys that our babies, that our parents give us, and progress on into early school where we have to segregate into gender groups and our teachers treat us differently based upon our gender. And so these ideas of what it means to be a male and female are impressed upon us by our environment. Now, these are completely different from our feelings of sexual attraction, remember? So the identity that is placed upon you is male or female in whatever is consistent or preferred by your society. And this may or may not match the feelings that you have inside your head, right? Oh, just a note. And you know what? Even the media that we experience is going to support and help socialize us to these gender roles. In fact, your book suggests that children who watch a lot more TV tend to hold more stereotypical beliefs about gender than those people who watch less TV. And your book specifically points out this idea that TV commercials contain content which is very gender stereotype. So females appear less on TV, are less likely to be employed, and more likely to be younger, and more likely to appear in secondary and comedy roles. And more males are more often shown as competent, reaching goals, and showing ingenuity on TV. And TV commercials are especially likely to emphasize traditional gender roles. So, when you see these commercials and they have little boys or little girls, they're going to be engaged in different activities. So, you're going to see the girls representing dolls and animals and make believe more often than the boys, who you're going to see representing games and action figures and sports and transportation. And so basically, everyone from our parents to our friends in school to our teachers to the television create these gender expectations, these gender roles that we have. Now, again, we expect males to be achievement oriented, aggressive, autonomous, sexual, and not complain about aches and pains, right? These are role. When I was in high school, I wanted to play softball. My dad told me no because that's for boys. Doesn't that for Barnes? Do you mean boys or barn? Or is Barnes some sort of term that I don't know, Johanna? Yeah. Uh, oh, for boys. Okay, right. For boys. Absolutely. And these are gender expectations that sort of limit what you can or can't do. Who knows, Johanna? You might have been the best softball player that ever lived, but you didn't get a chance because your dad didn't want you to. Now, while your boys are have all these individual role expectations to be strong, to achieve, to dominate, to be sexual, and to be powerful, your females are going to have sort of these other role expectations. Most of you females probably have felt pressure to get married, to pair off with another man. So you have this marriage mandate. A lot of you females probably are feeling pressure to have children as well. And you know what? Now, there are people who believe that females, along with doing all this, the female has to also work outside the home. So, which asks, so she has to build a home, she has to raise children, and she also has to work. So the females sort of get this impossible mandate of taking care of a home and taking care of children. And your males basically have these achievement dominating kinds of role expectations. Now, the neat thing about gender roles is it does help us organize society a little bit, right? So when things were tougher and we didn't have machines and computers and brute strength was useful in a lot of outdoor places, it was good to organize activities based upon who was stronger and could do the strength related activities and who was less strong and could do the other activities. So historically, gender roles have resulted from a division of labor. And you know what? This sort of has allowed society to function more effectively. However, somebody mentioned in webinar last night that technology has changed and physical strength is no longer necessary as a survival quality. One can live in the world and not necessarily have to violently defend themselves or to hunt or trap or to worry about people robbing and stealing from them. And so these historical forces that made gender role expectations useful in the past are not as relevant today. Traditional roles no longer make economic sense. Machinery has replaced much manual labor, and both parents can rear children. And so there are people who don't want to conform to traditional gender roles and experience strain when pressured to do so. Some women don't want to stay home and take care of the babies. Some women don't want to have children. And that causes pressure and strain as you deal with the people around you who expect you to do these female like things. Some males would like to show emotions. Some males would like to show tenderness. However, we experience strain in a world that will not allow us to show kindness or emotions or thoughtfulness or show a soft side. And so people are suffering stress because these gender roles no longer fit. And honestly, we were talking last night about that video of the people that were in the gender free parenting. And you might say, holy cow, why would somebody do that? It can't wind up turning out well. These are people who were marginalized by typical gender role expectations. There are people who are marginalized by these gender role expectations, and they feel a great deal of pressure because they don't necessarily want to conform to them. And I think that what you see with the gender free parenting movement, the gender neutral parenting movement, is people trying to remove the pressures that come from people who are asked to engage in gender stereotypic behavior that doesn't fit them. If you want to engage in this male role, if this male activity fits you as a male, fantastic. But if this male role fits you as a female, why should you avoid it? On the other hand, if this male role doesn't fit you and you are a male, why should you experience stress and pressure to conform to this male role? So, Dimitro, you mentioned hunting. I don't really want to shoot anything. Number one, I don't want to hang out in the woods and freeze my butt off for hours waiting for something. And I know that animals have to get killed for us to eat, but I just don't want to involve myself in the actual activity. And so I don't want to engage in that masculine activity. When I met my wife's parents, they were from the country, and everybody in her family hunts. When they found out that I did not hunt, that I did not have a hunting license or a rifle, that I wasn't interested in going hunting, these people were shocked and taken aback, and I think they were a little bit insulted. When my boys were born, there was great pressure in my family to buy the boys hunting licenses. But you know what? That didn't fit me or my culture, so I didn't want to buy these hunting licenses. However, what I found was there was a great deal of pressure put on me as my family attempted to force me to engage in this gender role behavior that didn't fit me. Now, what I will tell you is the research suggests that people in these traditional gender role marriages have less experience, less relationship satisfaction. And so marriages where we have these traditional role expectations are less happy, where we have marriages where there aren't as strong of these gender role expectations. And I would suggest this is probably due to the fact that these gender role expectations tend to put a lot more pressure on the female in the relationship than they do the male. So the female can't do this, the female can't do this, the female must raise children, the female must take care of the household, the female must earn money, and there's in the male must earn money. And so what you're going to find is that some of these traditional gender role marriages don't work out as well as those where there is some flexibility in the gender role identities of the people. Right? Now, what are the problems with the male role? And I don't want to complain. There are a lot of advantages of being a male. And so please do not take this as a complaint. Although, if I'm complaining, doggone it, maybe you should let me complain instead of saying, shut up, you're a boy, quit complaining, right? But there's a lot of pressure to succeed on males to be strong, to be powerful, to be rich. And your book suggests that there's a lot of pressure to succeed that comes with the male stereotype. The other thing is, it's not healthy to suppress your emotion. It's important that you understand how to interpret your emotions, to know when you're embarrassed, when you're shy, when you're sad. The unfortunate problem with male gender role socialization is we're taught to suppress our emotions and we're taught not to know our emotions. So, what you're going to find is a lot of men only know how to use anger because that's a masculine emotion. But men don't know how to deal with their feelings of weakness, their feelings of shame and embarrassment and of sadness. And what men do whenever they feel these emotions is they immediately revert to the angry emotional response because that's the only thing that's allowed for their particular gender. And this creates emotional difficulties for the man, and this also makes men more difficult to be engaged in relationships with. It really destroys a relationship when you are with somebody who can't experience, understand, or relate to their emotions. And you're going to find that the hypersexuality that is required of males is going to create relationship problems also. So, the pressure to be a sexually vibrant person may cause a male to engage in behaviors that are relationship destructive, right? You know what? A lot of times men think that sex equals intimacy. Emotional intimacy can be achieved through sex, but emotional intimacy is more than just sex. And some men maybe don't understand that. And I will tell you um, that the fear of being labeled as a homosexual um, really impairs men's ability to show some of these softer feminine traits, some of the warmth and lovingness that is important for building relationships. Um, I don't want to show these kinds of feelings, especially towards other men, because I'm afraid that I will be judged as a homosexual. And so a lot of men are afraid to build relationships, intimate relationships with other men, friendships. And friendships are a protective factor in times of stress. But because we are afraid of being judged, of having our sexuality questioned, a lot of men are going to close themselves off from the possibility of close relationships with other men. And what you're going to find is that men don't deal as well with divorce and separation because we don't have that emotional support group around us that a female has. And so when a partner passes, dies, or a partner leaves us, your outcomes for men typically aren't going to be as positive. And it's because we've been prevented from creating these warm, loving relationships that are protective factors. What are the problems with the female role? Of course, there are the diminished career aspirations. One of the things that I can tell you about a lot of my successful friend couples, I have lots of friend couples where the male and the female both have advanced degrees, masters or PhDs. Both have spent a long time getting these educations. And what I typically find is that when they finish these educations, these married couples always follow the man's job. Where can the man advance his career the most? And what you're going to find is this need for men to have a sense of job achievement. What you're going to find is that in power couples, a lot of times the female has to give up her career aspirations or settle for less career success, because in these couples, the primary important thing is the man's career success. And so, what you're going to see is that even in relationships where both parents could have great economic outcomes, they're typically going to follow the man's career aspirations. And so, what you're going to see, and your book's going to call this the ability achievement gap. I know tons of female PhDs who are now part-timing it or doing things outside of their science because they are married to a male PhD who is following his career. And you know what? Some women who diligently pursue their own career are seen as less feminine. People don't like them because they prioritize career over relationships. So the female role is going to show diminished career aspirations and outcomes for females. The other thing that I see with a lot of females is even if they are allowed to pursue their their career aspirations, they are also required to take care of the domestic activities around the house. Either they'll lead them, or in some relationships, they do all of them, even though they have a full-time job as well. So the male and female will both come home from working a full day. The male may sit down and relax, but the female now has to engage in the domestic activities that are typically associated with being a female. Who's going to cook dinner? Well, girls cook dinner, not guys. So now that we're home from work, female, please cook dinner. Who's going to take care of the children, bathe the children, change their diapers, feed the children? Well, that's typically a female activity. So, what you'll see in a lot of families is that the female has to juggle all of these roles. Just because they may decide to have career aspirations does not release them from the domestic duties that they must follow. And then one of the things that one of the pressures that sort of impairs the well-being and satisfaction of females is this idea that females aren't really supposed to be as interested in sex as males, whereas the male is taught to suppress uh, his emotional content, suppress his feelings. As a general rule, we suggest to females that it is important that they suppress their sexual desires. Females are taught that it's love and not sex that's important, and females are sometimes punished for being interested in sexuality. And now I will tell you that there's a greater fear for females because they can get pregnant. And what you're going to see today with the rolling back of Roe versus Wade is this likelihood of getting pregnant becomes even more fearful for females because there's nothing they can do about it. What happens if birth control is made illegal? What happens if these things that allow you to have sex for pleasure are removed? Then females, especially because they're the ones that get pregnant and carry the baby for 9 months, there's a certain ambivalence about sexuality. So these gender roles that males and females both feel, right, come with certain advantages and certain disadvantages. So your males are supposed to get great jobs. We're supposed to be aggressive and powerful and sexual and not show weakness. On the other hand, your females are supposed to want to get married, want to have children. And today, most women are also expected to pull their own weight too. Now, while this sexual differentiation, gender differentiation of jobs was useful back before we had automation and machines and other things to help us, they are not as useful now, and they come with downsides. For the males, this pressure to succeed, this emotional stoicism that we're supposed to show, and this hypersexuality that we're both supposed to show comes with problematic aspects. And the same thing for the females. This desire to have a job, but also this need to take care of a family and children causes conflicts for females as well. And so there are problems with both of these gender roles. So, to recap, historically, gender roles have resulted from divisions of labor. Aggression for men allow for hunting and nurturing, and women to allow for child rearing. However, these traditional roles no longer make economic sense. The machinery has replaced manual labor, and both parents can rear children. Many do not want to conform to these traditional gender roles and experience strain when pressured to do so. In addition, we find that in these very rigid gender roles, we find that relationships don't go as well. So maybe we should think about becoming a little more flexible and about how we apply gender roles to people. All right. And so the gender role transcendence perspective suggests, and this is what I think most of us in class, you folks are all pretty clever. This is, I think, what you believe. So we have sort of moved beyond gender roles as a way of perceiving ourselves. We know that there are male roles and there are male activities, and there are female roles and female activities, but instead of thinking about them in terms of male and female, we think about them in terms of instrumental and expressive. So now I would argue for people like you and I, the more evolved people, instead of saying that's a boy activity, we think of that as being an instrumental or aggressive activity. Instead of saying that child rearing is a female activity, we're going to say it's more of an expressive activity. So what I'm asking you to do is to really be more transcending in your application of gender roles. Each and every one of you at some point is probably going to pair up, and that pairing is more often than not going to be of a heterosexual nature. So it's going to be a male and a female pairing up one together. I invite each and every one of you to be flexible enough to engage in male role stereotypic behaviors and female role stereotypic behaviors. What does that mean? Well, that means for you males, learn how to cook a dinner, learn how to change a diaper, learn how to be nurturing towards your child, learn how to help your female with the stereotypic female behaviors. You know what? As a male, be willing to follow your female if she gets a good job and let her economic outcomes dictate the family if that's better. On the other hand, for you females, learn how to mow the grass. Learn how to play aggressively with the little boys. Be willing to teach your daughters how to do aggressive boy things as opposed to just training them to be proper and pretty little girls. So what I hope that we as a 21st century population are doing is learning how to transcend these typical roles, to take what we need from these roles while learning how to be flexible and new in applying our strategies and abilities. And I'm not suggesting that we all be like David Bowie under here and be androgynous, right? But what I think is important is that we take from this idea of androgyny that we all possess both male and female personality traits, and that is okay. Androgynous people who accept both the positive and negative characteristics of themselves, tend to be less constrained on their behavior, and they can function more flexibly. And people whose relationship partners can escape these gender stereotypes tend to experience more satisfaction. So Matthew, not Matthew, but Dimitro, you're talking about your wife and your daughter. Learn how to feel the feminine side of your personality, Dimitro. Your wife and your daughter will both appreciate it. And I know you're a tough Ukrainian European male, and I get that. And you should definitely have all of those tough masculine characteristics. But also don't be afraid to accept and experience and demonstrate any of those traits that you have that might be considered stereotypically female. All right, that's the end of my lecture. So next week we are going to be focusing on chapter 13 and 16. We're going to do a little switch, 13 and 16. 14 and 15 both have to do with mental illness. So I want to put those together one week. Chapter 14 and 15 we're going to do the last week. And so chapter 13 and 16 are about vocational outcomes and things not related to psychological disorders. So we're going to put 13 and 16 next week together, and then we're going to do chapter 14 and 15 the last week of the semester. Don't forget, your discussion boards are due tonight at 11:59 p.m., And your homework for this week is due Friday night at 11:59 p.m. Does anybody have any questions before I log off for the evening? For the morning, excuse me. All right, fantastic. All right, cool. Folks, it looks like we are done. Thank you, Chris. I hope you have a great. Hey, thanks, Matt. I appreciate you coming. And I do appreciate you participating in last night's discussion. I thought you had some good comments. Same with you, Dimitro. And I thought Colton did a great job last night. And I really appreciated some of the comments that he made. So it was great talking to you folks this week. I hope you have a great weekend. If you have any questions or problems, don't hesitate to send me a text or an email. But otherwise, I'm going to log off and say goodbye. So you have a great day. Bye.